Kawhi Leonard's career has always been wrapped in mystery. He's the superstar who barely talks, avoids the spotlight, and somehow manages to stay invisible in a league built on personalities. But this time, staying quiet wasn't going to save him, because buried deep inside a stack of boring bankruptcy filings, his name appeared in a way that could shake the entire NBA. It all started in March 2025, when a so-called green banking company called Aspiration officially collapsed. On the surface, Aspiration had been marketed as the bank that would save the planet. It promised customers that every swipe of their debit card would fund the planting of trees, offsetting carbon emissions, and making people feel good about their financial choices. For years, they looked unstoppable, backed by celebrities, investors, and a mountain of cash. But when the company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, what came out wasn't just broken promises. It was the beginning of a scandal that could expose one of the NBA's most shocking frauds ever. Enter investigative journalist Pablo Torre. While most people ignored the hundreds of pages of bankruptcy documents, Torre dug deeper. In one packet, a strange detail jumped out at him. Among the long list of creditors Aspiration still owed money to, one company name stood out: KL2, Aspire L. On paper, it looked like just another obscure business entity. But when Torre traced it through California's Secretary of State database, the truth hit like a thunderbolt. KL2, Aspire, wasn't random. It was directly tied to Kawhi Leonard. At first, this seemed bizarre. Why would one of the NBA's most reclusive stars have any connection to a failed eco-banking startup? But as Torre pulled the thread, the story unraveled fast. What he uncovered was a paper trail spanning 7 months, over 3,400 documents, and countless contracts that pointed to something much bigger than just a celebrity endorsement gone wrong. The LLC, named after Kawhi's jersey number, wasn't just another side hustle. It represented the final installment of a massive $28 million endorsement deal between Leonard and Aspiration. But here's the kicker. There was zero evidence Kawhi ever did anything for the company. No tweet, no Instagram posts, no commercials, not even a single interview mentioning the brand. Nothing. That total silence wasn't just weird, it was suspicious. Because while other celebrities tied to Aspiration like Leonardo DiCaprio or Drake made public statements and appearances, Kawhi's deal was invisible. It existed entirely on paper. No fan had ever seen it. No media outlet had ever reported it. And yet there it was. A secret contract worth tens of millions buried inside bankruptcy documents. For Torre, that discovery was the spark that lit the fuse. If Kawhi was tied to Aspiration, why was it kept hidden? Why did his deal seem structured differently from everyone else's? And most importantly, who stood to benefit? As he soon found out, this wasn't just about planting trees or failed banking experiments. The deeper he dug, the clearer it became. This was about money, power, and one of the boldest attempts at salary cap manipulation the NBA had ever seen. And the person at the center of it all, Kawhi Leonard. To understand why this hidden contract was such a big deal, you first need to know what Aspiration was selling and why so many powerful people rushed to be part of it. Founded in 2013 by two ambitious Harvard graduates, Andre Cherney and Joe Sandberg, Aspiration pitched itself as the world's first green bank. Their business model sounded almost too good to be true. For every transaction you made, Aspiration promised to plant trees that would cancel out your carbon footprint. Swipe your debit card, and suddenly you weren't just buying coffee. You were saving the planet. It was slick, simple, and brilliant marketing. In a world where climate change headlines dominate the news, Aspiration made people feel like they were personally fighting back, one purchase at a time. Customers could brag that their bank account wasn't just holding money, it was making the earth greener. But the real magic wasn't in the business model, it was in the celebrities. Aspiration launched an endorsement blitz that looked like the Avengers had been assembled to save the environment. Robert Downey Jr., fresh off his Iron Man fame, lent his iconic voice to their commercials, adding instant credibility. Leonardo DiCaprio, Hollywood's most famous environmentalist, wasn't just a face, he became an investor and an advisor. Drake put money in too, giving interviews about how Aspiration's approach inspired him. Orlando Bloom, Cindy Crawford, and her daughter Kaya Gerber all signed on. It seemed like everyone who mattered in Hollywood wanted to be associated with this eco-friendly revolution. With this star power, money came flooding in. Between 2013 and 2021, Aspiration raised a staggering $65 million in funding. By 2021, it was valued at $2.3 billion, making it one of the hottest fintech startups in the country. And with all those millions, they positioned themselves for a grand future. A public IPO that could have cemented them as the face of green banking forever. But here's where the cracks started to show. Behind the glossy ads and red carpet endorsements, Investigators later discovered that many of Aspiration's claims simply weren't true. The tree planting programs, most were unverified, or worse, non-existent. The carbon offset initiatives they bragged about, in many cases, completely fabricated. In fact, one insider later admitted that during their entire tenure at the company, only one single site visit had been made to verify any of the supposed projects. Everything else was numbers on a spreadsheet, inflated claims, and promises that never materialized. Still, at the time, no one outside the company knew this. To the public, Aspiration looked unstoppable, like a perfect combination of environmentalism, celebrity influence, and Silicon Valley innovation. Investors lined up, fans raved, and celebrities cashed in. But what no one realized back then was that Aspiration's biggest deal wasn't with DiCaprio, Drake, or Downey. Their single most valuable endorsement contract, bigger than all the others combined, was with Kawhi Leonard. And unlike the other stars who appeared in ads or spoke on camera, Kawhi never had to say a word. His deal was different, secret, hidden, and when the truth came out, it would make even the most seasoned NBA insiders question whether they were witnessing one of the boldest frauds in sports history. Because Kawhi's contract wasn't just about planting trees, it was about planting money in a way that looked legitimate until you looked closer. When Pablo Torre first uncovered KL2 Aspire LLC in those bankruptcy filings, it didn't look like much, just another name on a long list of creditors owed money. But the deeper he dug, the more shocking the truth became. That little LLC wasn't random, it was Kawhi Leonard's company, and it wasn't owed pocket change. It was owed the final $7 million installment of a secret 4-year, $28 million endorsement contract. On the surface, that shouldn't have been surprising. Athletes sign endorsement deals all the time. But what made this different was how the contract was structured and how Kawhi carried it out. Unlike Robert Downey Jr., who lent his voice to commercials, or Drake, who publicly praised the company in Rolling Stone interviews, Kawhi never once promoted Aspiration. No commercials, no photos, no tweets, no Instagram posts, nothing. You could search his entire digital footprint, and you'd find zero references to the company. In fact, the total number of times Kawhi publicly mentioned Aspiration was exactly 0. That wasn't an oversight, it was by design. Torre eventually got his hands on the actual signed contract between KL2 Aspire LLC and Aspiration, and what he found left even seasoned sports business experts stunned. The deal looked less like a marketing contract and more like a guaranteed payment pipeline. The language in the agreement essentially gave Kawhi full control and no real obligations. He could veto any request for promotional appearances if he felt it wasn't consistent with his beliefs. He didn't have to attend events. He didn't have to post on social media. He didn't even have to provide content if he didn't want to. The requirements were so laughably minimal that one lawyer described it as a no-show job written in legalese. To put it in perspective, the contract only required Kawhi to sign 50 items if asked, interact organically on social media 5 times, and provide 1 photo per month during the NBA season. Even those tiny commitments, Kawhi never fulfilled them. But here's the kicker. The contract included a termination clause that revealed its real purpose. Payments would stop if Kawhi was no longer employed by the Los Angeles Clippers. In other words, the deal wasn't about Kawhi Leonard, the global superstar, it was about Kawhi Leonard, the Clippers player. That detail raised massive red flags. To the NBA, endorsement money tied directly to a player's employment status can look an awful lot like extra salary. And if that's true, then this wasn't just a shady sponsorship. It was a direct attempt to skirt the league's salary cap rules. When former Miami Marlins president David Sampson reviewed the contract during Torre's investigation, even he was floored. The structure didn't make sense as a marketing deal. It made sense as a way to funnel money to a player without it ever hitting the team's books. And if that was true, then the question became obvious. Who built this? Who had the resources, the connections, and the motivation to pull it off? The answer pointed straight to one man, Steve Ballmer, billionaire owner of the Clippers. To really understand how Kawhi Leonard ended up with a $28 million ghost contract, you have to follow the money, and every trail leads back to one man, Steve Ballmer. Ballmer isn't just any NBA owner. He's the 6th richest man in the world, with a net worth north of $100 billion. The former CEO of Microsoft, famous for his explosive energy and over-the-top sideline celebrations, isn't just a businessman. He's a financial powerhouse with the resources to bend the rules of the game without blinking. And when the pieces of the puzzle are laid out, it looks less like coincidence and more like design. The timeline is where it all comes together. In August 2021, Kawhi signed a 4-year, $786 million max extension with the Clippers. On the surface, a standard deal for one of the league's top players. But just 1 month later, in September 2021, Ballmer made a move that raised eyebrows. He broke ground on the Intuit Dome, set to be the most expensive NBA arena ever built, and simultaneously announced aspiration as a founding partner in a $300 million 23-year sponsorship deal. That's not just a sponsorship. That's generational money, and it tied Ballmer's Clippers directly to Aspiration's future. But it didn't stop there. In November 2021, Leonard quietly registered KL2 Aspire LLC in California just 2 months after Ballmer's massive investment and days after the sponsorship deal was announced. By April 2022, that LLC had secured Kawhi's 4-year, $28 million endorsement contract with Aspiration. The timing wasn't random. It was precise. And here's where Ballmer's fingerprints are clearest. Internal documents show that he personally invested $50 million of his own money into Aspiration through his private LLC, Pulpit. That money wasn't just a side bet, it was part of a larger $315 million round that boosted Aspiration's valuation to $2.3 billion. Without Ballmer's cash injection, Aspiration simply wouldn't have had the financial muscle to pay Kawhi's deal. Multiple former Aspiration employees later told investigators that Leonard's contract was openly referred to as salary cap circumvention. They even joked about it internally, acknowledging that the whole arrangement wasn't about marketing or endorsements at all. It was about funneling money to Kawhi outside the Clippers' books. One whistleblower described it bluntly: "It was the single biggest contract we ever signed, worth more than all our other celebrity deals combined, and Kawhi did absolutely nothing for it. Everyone knew why. It was to keep him with the Clippers. Plain and simple." But Ballmer's involvement went even deeper. Emails obtained by Pablo Torre revealed that Ballmer personally connected Aspiration's executives with powerful partners, including the CEO of Intuit, the very company that slapped its name on the Clippers' new arena. He wasn't just investing, he was actively promoting Aspiration and shaping its business relationships. So the structure was clear. Ballmer provides the funding. Aspiration acts as the middleman. Kawhi gets paid millions to endorse a company he never once mentioned. On paper, it looked legitimate, but in reality, it was a sophisticated system designed to do one thing: buy Kawhi Leonard's loyalty while dodging the NBA's salary cap rules. The elegance of the scheme is exactly why it lasted so long, undetected. To the public, it looked like business as usual, just another billionaire owner investing in an eco-friendly company while his star player signed an endorsement deal. But to federal investigators and NBA officials, once the documents were exposed, it started to look like one of the most calculated frauds in modern sports. And as Aspiration's financial troubles mounted, the cracks in Ballmer's carefully built house of cards began to show. By late 2022, Aspiration's glossy image was starting to crack. On paper, they had raised nearly $1 billion, partnered with Hollywood royalty, and locked in a $300 million sponsorship with the Clippers. But inside the company, the reality was chaos. Bills piled up, investors demanded answers, and employees whispered about the truth. Aspiration's money was vanishing faster than it was coming in. Weekly financial meetings turned into crisis calls. Employees described frantic discussions about who would get paid and who would be left hanging. Vendors, creditors, even Aspiration's own staff were often told to wait. But there was one contract that never faced delays. No matter how bad things got, one name always rose to the top of the list: Kawhi Leonard. According to multiple former employees, Leonard's endorsement payments were treated as untouchable. It was priority number one whistleblower revealed. Even when we couldn't make payroll, Kawhi's check went out, and if there was ever hesitation, Kawhi's longtime advisor and Uncle Dennis Robertson, better known as Uncle Dennis, made sure things stayed on track. Employees recalled phone calls where Robertson would demand payments on Kawhi's behalf. His voice wasn't just firm, it was absolute. When Uncle Dennis called, everything else was dropped. The company might be collapsing, but Leonard's $28 million contract was protected at all costs. This preferential treatment baffled some employees. After all, Leonard had done nothing for the company. He hadn't appeared in a single commercial, given a single quote, or even posted once about Aspiration. Other celebrity endorsers at least showed up in ads or interviews. Kawhi, he was invisible, yet his payday remained the company's top priority. By March 2025, the inevitable happened. Aspiration officially filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. That filing didn't just confirm the company's collapse, it blew the doors wide open on the entire scheme. The creditor list revealed shocking numbers. The Los Angeles Clippers themselves were owed $30 million from their unfulfilled sponsorship deal with Aspiration, and right alongside them, KL2 Aspire LLC. Kawhi Leonard's shell company owed $7 million for the final installment of his endorsement contract. This wasn't just bad optics. It was damning evidence. On the very same list, the Clippers and their star player appeared as creditors of a company their billionaire owner had heavily invested in. For investigators, that was the smoking gun. Federal agencies had already been circling aspiration, but the bankruptcy filings turned their quiet curiosity into full-blown investigations. The Department of Justice, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and even the Commodity Futures Trading Commission all moved in, pulling apart every financial record they could get their hands on. By August 2025, the collapse reached its most dramatic moment when co-founder Joe Sandberg, once a rising star in politics and finance, pleaded guilty to 2 counts of wire fraud. He admitted to defrauding investors of at least $248 million. The charges revealed that up to 90% of Aspiration's supposed business deals and environmental programs were fabricated. What had been sold as a billion-dollar green bank was exposed as a house of lies. And in the middle of that house, holding a $28 million no-show contract, stood Kawhi Leonard. For the NBA, this was no longer a quirky financial mystery. It was a full-blown crisis. Because if Leonard's deal with Aspiration was what it looked like, a carefully disguised salary supplement, then the league wasn't just facing a scandal. It was staring at the biggest salary cap crime in modern NBA history. For years, NBA executives have whispered about shady deals, under-the-table promises, and creative ways to bend the salary cap. But what Kawhi Leonard's Aspiration contract revealed wasn't just bending the rules, it was snapping them in half. And now, with federal investigators circling in the paper trail out in the open, the NBA had no choice but to treat it like the cardinal sin it was. Commissioner Adam Silver has long warned teams about crossing the line. In his own words, salary cap circumvention is a direct threat to the league's foundation of competitive balance. The cap isn't just a number, it's the great equalizer. It keeps billionaire owners from buying championships by outspending smaller market teams. If one owner could funnel millions to a star player off the books, what's to stop others from doing the same? The historical precedent was already ugly. Back in 2000, the Minnesota Timberwolves were caught cutting a secret side deal with forward Joe Smith. The fallout was brutal: a $3.5 million fine, Smith's contract voided, and the team stripped of 5 first-round draft picks. For years afterward, the Joe Smith scandal was shorthand for the NBA's harshest punishment. But compared to Kawhi's deal, Joe Smith looked like child's play. Smith's under-the-table agreement was worth about $86 million over several years. Kawhi's Aspiration contract funneled $28 million his way in just 4 years. And it wasn't just between player and team, it allegedly involved the team's billionaire owner, an outside corporation, and a fraudulent banking empire. The scale was unprecedented. Under the league's current collective bargaining agreement, the penalties for proven salary cap circumvention are devastating. The Clippers could be fined up to $7.5 million, lose as many as 5 first-round draft picks, and see Kawhi's contract voided entirely. The league also has the power to suspend or even ban executives and owners if they're found guilty of orchestrating such schemes. For the Clippers, those penalties would be catastrophic. With Kawhi already locked into a massive $130 million extension signed in 2024, losing him to a voided contract would gut the team's roster and competitive window. Losing draft picks on top of that could cripple the franchise for years, leaving them without the assets to rebuild. And then there's Steve Ballmer. On one hand, he claims to be a victim, saying he was conned by Aspiration just like everyone else. But the timeline, his $50 million investment, and the internal emails connecting him directly to the company's executives tell a different story. If investigators conclude that Ballmer knowingly funded Kawhi's off-the-books deal, the league could be forced to make a choice it has never faced before: punishing one of its richest, most powerful owners. The pressure isn't just coming from fans. Other owners across the NBA are furious. To them, Ballmer's alleged scheme wasn't just cheating, it was buying an unfair advantage. They're demanding Silver make an example out of the Clippers to send a message: no one, no matter how rich, is above the rules. Social media outrage only amplifies the storm. Fans are calling it the biggest cap crime ever, and hashtags demanding Kawhi's ban have been trending for weeks. The public wants blood, and Adam Silver knows that if he doesn't deliver, the league's credibility will take a hit it may never fully recover from. And for Kawhi Leonard, the quiet superstar who always stayed out of the spotlight, silence might not be an option anymore. As the walls closed in, the responses from the key players could not have been more different. Steve Ballmer, the man at the center of the storm, went on the offensive. Kawhi Leonard, true to form, said nothing. and the rest of the NBA, they wanted heads to roll. Ballmer's defense was simple. He was conned. In multiple interviews, he painted himself as just another victim of Aspiration's fraud. They tricked me, he insisted. I made an investment thinking it was legitimate, and they lied. He claimed that the $50 million he poured into Aspiration was no different from the money lost by other celebrities and corporations who believed in the company's eco-friendly promises. On paper, that argument might have sounded believable. After all, even Leonardo DiCaprio and Drake had thrown their names behind Aspiration. But the difference was glaring. Neither of them owned an NBA team. Neither of them had a star player tied to a secret contract with the same company. And neither of them was caught sending emails personally connecting Aspiration's founders with billion-dollar business partners. The evidence made Ballmer's denial look thin. Internal emails showed him actively facilitating deals for Aspiration, calling their founders partners, and even championing their sustainability initiatives as part of his Clippers Arena project. This wasn't a passive investment, this was involvement, and that made his public image spiral. Fans mocked his defense online, with one viral comment summing up the skepticism perfectly: "You don't accidentally fund your own star player's secret contract." While Ballmer scrambled, Kawhi Leonard stuck to the strategy that had defined his career: silence. No press conferences, no statements, no denials. He simply disappeared, letting the storm rage around him. For years, Kawhi's quiet personality had been seen as mysterious, even cool, but now that silence looked less like composure and more like guilt. The silence didn't help his image. On social media, fans demanded answers. How do you take $28 million and never say a word about the company paying you? Others compared him to a ghost employee, cashing checks while doing nothing. The meme culture that Kawhi had once avoided now dragged him in relentlessly, with clips of his awkward laugh repurposed into punchlines about laughing all the way to the bank. Meanwhile, other NBA owners turned up the pressure on Commissioner Adam Silver. They weren't satisfied with Ballmer's excuses or Kawhi's silence. To them, this was about more than one player or one team. It was about the integrity of the league itself. If Ballmer got away with it, what would stop another billionaire owner from copying the same playbook? Behind closed doors, sources reported growing tension between ownership groups. Small market owners, in particular, were outraged, seeing Ballmer's alleged scheme as proof that the system was rigged in favor of the ultra-rich. Even players around the league began whispering about it. Some were angry that Kawhi had pocketed millions for doing nothing, while others privately admitted they admired how carefully the deal had been set up until it blew up. For the Clippers, the scandal became a nightmare that wouldn't fade. Every game, every press conference, every highlight was overshadowed by the looming investigation. Their arena project, once hailed as the most advanced and eco-friendly stadium in the league, was now tainted by association. And for Kawhi Leonard, the damage wasn't just about money. His carefully maintained image of a quiet, hard-working superstar had been cracked. Now, people were asking questions he couldn't avoid forever. The fallout was clear: denials weren't enough, silence wasn't enough, and the league was running out of patience. The storm wasn't passing, it was about to get worse. What makes this scandal so explosive isn't just the money, the fraud, or even the punishment Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers could face. It's what it represents for the future of the NBA. Because if a billionaire owner, a superstar player, and a flashy corporate partner can build a scheme this sophisticated and keep it hidden for years, what does that say about the system itself? For decades, the salary cap has been the backbone of competitive balance. It's the reason small market teams like the Milwaukee Bucks or Oklahoma City Thunder can dream of building contenders without being outbid by the richest owners. But the Kawhi Aspiration scandal exposed a terrifying loophole. What if the cap doesn't matter at all? If owners can just funnel money through sponsorships and endorsements that never reach the public eye? That possibility has shaken the NBA's foundation. League officials are already discussing reforms, stricter monitoring of endorsement contracts, harsher oversight of owner investments, and new disclosure requirements for any deals involving companies tied to team ownership. Some owners want third-party audits of all major sponsorships. Others are calling for caps on how much a company linked to an owner can pay a player. The fear is simple. If Ballmer could do this, what's to stop another billionaire from doing it better? Imagine an owner creating a shell company, investing millions, then sponsoring their own players with fake endorsement deals. It's the kind of loophole that could destroy the very concept of a salary cap overnight. The ripple effects also extend to player trust and reputation. Kawhi Leonard, once admired for his work ethic and quiet focus, is now seen by some fans as a willing participant in one of the league's darkest scandals. Even if he avoids criminal charges, his legacy may be forever stained. In an era where players fight for their brand value as much as their performance on the court, being labeled as the face of a $28 million no-show contract could follow him for the rest of his career. The scandal also reignited old suspicions. Back in 2019, during Kawhi's free agency, multiple teams complained that his camp had asked for improper perks and benefits. At the time, the NBA brushed it off as speculation. But now, with documented evidence of a secret side deal, those whispers don't feel so far-fetched anymore. Public reaction has been equally unforgiving. Social media exploded with outrage, not just at Kawhi but at the system itself. Hashtags like John Cap Crime and Ban Ballmer trended for days, with fans demanding severe punishment. Even casual viewers who never cared about salary caps are now questioning the league's fairness. And it doesn't stop at basketball. Federal investigations into aspirations fraud are still ongoing, meaning more names could be dragged into the mess. If prosecutors find deeper connections between the company's investor fraud and NBA contracts, the scandal could expand beyond sports into a high-profile case of corporate and financial crime. At the heart of it all is one unsettling truth. This wasn't an accident. It was a system built deliberately, piece by piece, by people who knew exactly what they were doing. And now, the NBA faces a choice. Do they hand down punishment strong enough to scare every team straight? Or do they risk opening the door to a future where billionaires can quietly buy championships behind closed doors? For Kawhi Leonard, Steve Ballmer, and the Clippers, the fallout may be just beginning. But for the NBA as a whole, the bigger picture is even scarier. This scandal doesn't just threaten one team's future, it threatens the credibility of the entire league. The Kawhi Leonard scandal isn't just another sports headline. It's a story that cuts to the heart of what makes the NBA work. For years, Kawhi was known as the silent superstar, the player who let his game do the talking. But now, that silence has become the center of the biggest salary cap scandal the league has ever seen. A $28 million endorsement deal with no commercials, no interviews, and no posts. A billionaire owner with a $50 million investment in the very company funneling money to his star player. And a fraudulent bank that promised to save the planet, while secretly collapsing under the weight of lies. Put all of it together, and what you get isn't just shady business, it's a blueprint for how to buy success in plain sight. The fallout is still unfolding. Federal prosecutors are digging deeper into aspirations books, and every week brings new revelations about how far the fraud went. The NBA's investigation is ongoing, with Adam Silver facing enormous pressure from fans, players, and owners to hand down the harshest penalties in decades. Kawhi's contract, the Clippers' draft picks, and even Steve Ballmer's future as an NBA owner all hang in the balance. For the Clippers, this could mean losing everything. Their championship window, their star player, their hard-earned credibility, all of it could vanish with one league decision. For Kawhi Leonard, the damage may already be done. No matter what happens next, his name will forever be linked to a scandal that could define this era of basketball. But beyond the Clippers, beyond Kawhi, this scandal forces a bigger question. How many other deals like this might be hiding in plain sight? If Ballmer, one of the richest men in the world, could orchestrate something this complex, who's to say other owners aren't already doing the same? Just smarter, cleaner, harder to detect. That's why this moment matters so much. It isn't just about one player or one team. It's about the future of the NBA itself. A league built on parity and competitive balance cannot survive if billionaires can quietly rewrite the rules. The punishment for this case won't just decide Kawhi's legacy, it could decide whether the salary cap means anything at all. And that's what makes this story so shocking. Kawhi Leonard, the quietest superstar of his generation, may now be remembered as the face of the loudest scandal the league has ever seen. So now the ball's in your court. Do you think Kawhi deserves a lifetime ban? Should Ballmer be forced to sell the team? Or is this just another example of the rich playing by their own rules while the rest of us watch from the sidelines? Drop your thoughts below because one thing is certain, the NBA will never be the same after this.